We are officially at the tail end of the second week of 2016. Star Wars The Force Awakens is now the highest grossing movie of all time. It's safe to say you people have seen this movie, and if you haven't, well, you aren't going to care that I'm going to be talking about spoilers in this review. So, yeah, if you care for whatever reason, go ahead and turn this off now. It's really weird. It's 2016. You should have seen this movie already. Anyways, moving on. We get to talk about all the things we didn't get to talk about last time. That's really exciting. So I know in the last review, I talked about how I could possibly be argued from moving my B plus grade up to an A minus. After seeing this 4 times in both 2D and 3D, I'm gonna have to stick with my B plus rating. I really, really like this movie. I really, really dig it. It makes me happy and hopeful for the franchise as a whole. But in the end, there are a lot of things that just sort of, not like big things, but enough little things that kind of just brought it down from, just being a fantastically great, perfect movie to a really good movie, but yet one that has a lot of flaws. So that being said, I'm not going to go ahead and go through the movie like from top to bottom. I kind of want to address, after it being so long, from when it was actually released, and me being able to sort of absorb all of these fan theories and everything that's going on, all these other reviews, and that's Spock. He doesn't like Star Wars, but that's okay. So after, having so much time to kind of think on it, I really kind of want to respond more to sort of the big moments, the big spoilers that we didn't get to talk about last time. The biggest one, of course, being the death of Han Solo. And the other big one being the fact that Han Solo is killed at the hand of his own son, who ends up being Kylo Ren, formerly known as Ben Solo. Full disclosure, Kylo Ren is my new favorite character. I absolutely love and adore him. And I know it's sacrilegious to a lot of you, since I've talked to a lot of people who really don't like this movie. Like, they like the movie, but ultimately they don't like the fact that this is the movie that has ended with the death of one of the most beloved characters, not just for this franchise, but, in all of movie history. Hi, Spock. What you doing, buddy? Go to sleep. I'm trying to talk to people. He's so rude. Whatever, just ignore him. He's so weird. Okay, so, nobody needs that much water. Seriously, dude. You are so rude sometimes. You know that? I'm sorry. Continuing on. So let's talk about Kylo Ren. I love Kylo Ren. A lot of people don't like the fact that this movie does end up with Han Solo dying. I think it was an absolutely brilliant move, a very brave move, because, I don't know a whole lot of franchises that would be willing to kind of kill off such a popular character. I also like the fact that it becomes integral to Kylo Ren's whole character development, and definitely a pivotal moment within the franchise itself. And the reason that I like Kylo Ren as much as I do is because the one thing that sort of annoys me, especially, now in the new millennium, we have this tendency to go ahead and present our villains with this sort of redemption story, from like Wicked or Maleficent. We think in order to make our villains interesting, they have to be redeeming in some way. Really that we're kind of, the hero, if you think about it in a certain way. Like, I'm not down with that. I think it works for certain characters, and I get the reason for it. And we could kind of make the argument that it kind of started with Darth Vader, but I want my villains to be villains. I want them to be absolutely wonderful and just gloriously evil, and we don't get that all that often. And if we do, they're either just caricatures, mustache twirlers, and it's just kind of like, oh, that's not really interesting either. But with Kylo Ren, I get a villain that he's incredibly dedicated to the dark side. I never once, when I was watching this movie, did I ever get the feeling that he was actually going to repent and go home with Han Solo and say, hey mom, hey dad, sorry about everything, let's get me back to the Jedi way. I never thought that for a moment. But what I actually loved is that for someone who had such conviction in the things that he was going to do, where he wavered was more along the lines of he didn't know how those actions were going to make him feel later on. So that scene where he is confessing to, the burned mask of Darth Vader, forgive me, I feel the pull to the light again. I really love that. And it sort of telegraphed the fact that, Han Solo was going to die, along with the fact that Harrison Ford has said multiple times that he thinks that Han Solo should have died a long time ago. And I just love the fact that in that moment when he's giving that sort of confession and he admits that he is wavering a little bit, in terms of, how, the light and the dark within him. So it makes complete and total sense. And Han Solo's death became a necessity at that point because he just really believes that he has to sever any and every tie to the light side. And that includes killing his father. He really does believe that he needs to be the kind of person that is willing and able to kill his own father. And that's fascinating. And it definitely sets him on this path where he's not going to be redeemed by the end of it. And that is so much more interesting to me. I don't want to see another redemption story. We've seen it with Darth Vader. I don't want to see it with Kylo Ren. I just want to see somebody. The most that I think we could kind of hope for is one who just sort of accepts his death and defeat by the end of this, by the end of episode 9, and just says, yeah, I'm completely irredeemable. Do away with me. And then that'd be the end of it. And that's how he dies. What I also really liked about this movie were the new characters. I absolutely loved every single new character that was introduced in this movie. And the one thing that J.J. Abrams is absolutely fantastic with are character intros. There is one that I have a little bit of an issue with, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But in every single intro of these new characters, from Kylo Ren to Poe to Rey to Finn, there are always these little elegant touches that sort of hint at and give a broader context to who these people actually are that we can actually see, as opposed to just being revealed through dialogue or exposition. For example, with Poe, it was him, kind of deflecting and diffusing a tense situation when he first comes face to face with Kylo Ren with just, smart ass remarks, and you just instantly understood who that person was. With Rey, it was, them illustrating, what her home looked like, the hollowed out remains of I think it was an AT-AT walker. And it was just, the fact that it just looked really, really dusty, that, really unkempt and uncared for. And it just looked like, that there was just someone who was never at home living there. And I really liked that. And it really just sort of conveyed, just a lot of the character's past. And there's, instances like that throughout all these little new introductions. The one I have a problem with is Finn. I like Finn as a character. I like John Boyega's portrayal as Finn. The one thing that I'm not really kind of down with is, if this was the first time I was actually seeing Star Wars, the first time I was actually seeing, these new concepts of Star Wars, stormtroopers and whatnot, I don't think I'd have a problem with the fact that Finn plays a stormtrooper who is the first stormtrooper to actually go to the aid of another stormtrooper. The first time that we actually see that there are actual people with, emotions and their own, sense of morality underneath those uniforms. It's the first time we're seeing all this. And at first that was a little jarring to see, and it was such a departure from what we've seen from the previous 6 movies that it took me a little getting used to. And definitely by the second, third time, I was already over it and just decided that I like the character enough. I love John Boyega enough. I'm just going to kind of get over it just so that way I can enjoy this movie a lot more. But it's still in the back of my mind is just really, there's such a disconnect between the fact that this is a character that we're supposed to believe has been brainwashed since birth to be an obedient, conforming follower of the First Order, and yet it's also the most expressive and animated person in the entire movie. So there was just something, but again, it's such an interesting concept, the fact that, a stormtrooper who would actually defect from the dark side, from the First Order, and actually, join the good guys and he's really likable, really affable, and John Boyega is charming and wonderful. And again, you jump on the ride and you're just like, I don't even care. But then when you're off of it, you're kind of like, oh, there is something missing there. I'm hoping there's a deleted scene in the Blu-ray that we can that'll kind of like link it up a little bit better for me. The other thing that I kind of really, really liked was just the fact that this movie does feel familiar, and that's sort of been the double-edged sword of this movie. I like the fact that it does seem to fit, the ideas of Star Wars a lot better than definitely those prequel movies did, and I think that's in large part to the fact that they did return to practical effects. They did return to shooting on location as opposed to just, a 360, green screen. And what I really, by seeing this movie 4 times, what I really got to notice and appreciate was the fact that anytime that they were away from the First Order, if they were on Jakku, if they were with the Resistance, anytime they just basically weren't with the First Order, they really kept the CGI to a minimum, or at least so minimal that you just didn't even notice it. It was just so seamless. But whenever CGI was really called for, those big, huge moments, they seemed to be really concentrated and focused on being integrated into the First Order scenes. And that works, just because CGI, unless you really, really are intent on making it look as realistic as possible, it does have a tendency to look kind of sterile. And that's what happened in those prequel movies. But it works for, those First Order scenes, just because the First Order, the Empire, whatever it is that you want to refer to it as, they have that kind of aesthetic where everything is very clean, everything is very white and stark, and yeah, so it definitely worked. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? I wanted to talk about Rey, because one of the things that kind of sort of blew up in the weeks after the release of the movie was the fact that a lot of people started to criticize the character of Rey and how she was a Mary Sue. Now, I've actually watched that Max Landis video where he actually discusses all the reasons why in his opinion, she qualifies as a Mary Sue. And I got to tell you, I've watched that video, and every single argument that he gives is on point. There's nothing that he says that, is actually wrong. Hang on. No. What are you doing? What is that? Give me. No, I'm talking to people. Well, not people on my computer, but somehow, hopefully, there are people. Okay, I threw something. I don't know. It's late. Go to sleep. He's so demanding. Okay, so yeah, I watched the Max Landis video. Everything he says, in terms of the actual evidence that he gives, it isn't wrong. It's just unfortunately not the same reaction that I had to that same character, which is fine, because opinions are opinions. They can't really be right or wrong. They can just be. Dude, you are not supposed to be on that bed. That is not your bed. He's such an asshole. This is because I'm talking about Star Wars, isn't it? You wouldn't be doing this shit if I was talking about Star Trek. He's such a douche. Okay, so, where was I? Okay, so talking about Rey. And I figured out the reasons that I believe Rey and the reasons why I really dug the character and the performance was because it was the same reasons, the same exact reasons as to why I and the rest of us presumably believe and love John McClane in Die Hard. Both were characters played by actors that were sort of didn't look like the stereotypical action heroes. Daisy Ridley, while being a very, very pretty and attractive girl, she's not that sort of stereotypical Hollywood glamorous actress. She doesn't look like she's been cast by Michael Bay for another Transformers movie. And I like that. I also like the fact that in both John McClane and Rey, we get a character that isn't this dead-eyed, stoic, sort of robot that is just kind of just, shooting off rounds and walking away from explosions without looking back like a badass. I like the fact that, they are able to show a range of emotions. Rey, while being very isolated, and you could make that justification that being that isolated for that long, you could have very easily written her as someone that would have been either very socially awkward, could have been brash, or just really not a very friendly person, all for the sake of just making her look cooler. But you could have made that justification. But I like the fact that she's still optimistic and hopeful and has integrity, and she's still sort of no nonsense, and is able to stick up for herself when need be and stick up for others, like BB-8 when she comes to his rescue. I really like that. And not only that, but you get to see those moments where she does feel vulnerable. She does experience fear. She does experience anxiety and relief when, she is able to escape with her life and say, you're just going to be a distraction all the way through. So sorry. Yeah, so I really loved Rey, and I can totally understand why people want to criticize that character. I just got to say, I just did not have the same experience of her. I will say the one thing that definitely I did not like about this movie. I can make all sort of justifications and sort of, let a lot of other stuff just sort of roll off my back for the sake of just saying, you know what, I want to enjoy this movie because ultimately it is a lot of fun and it does make me feel a lot of great things that are really reminiscent about, the original trilogy and why I love Star Wars. But the one thing I cannot get behind is the soundtrack. Now, it is now 2016. John Williams has just received another Oscar nomination for Best Original Score for this movie. That irritates me just because I've gone ahead and I've listened to that soundtrack on its own. And in my original review, I said, John Williams is being really subtle, and that's not what I go to Star Wars to hear. And 100% I'm still behind that sentiment, because the one thing that gets under my skin the most is that even the shittiest Star Wars movies, which were episode 1 and 2, they had amazing music to go along with it. And even episode 3, but definitely episode 1 and 2 had those, had Duel of the Fates, they had Across the Stars, really, new original music that still managed to be, absolutely iconic. Be some of the, and always across the board, all 6 of those movies, the music has always been the best part of, those movies. I mean, the Star Wars soundtrack and those themes are the most famous movie themes of all time. Not just for sci-fi, not just for any sort of genre, of all time, period. In film, in cinema. I was at a basketball game and some 10-year-old behind me at a basketball game was singing Star Wars. And I mean, full-on melody, counter melody, harmonies. I mean, like, it was just, and in my mind, it just still irritated me. The fact that we got John Williams back for another Star Wars movie, and the best we could kind of get was just this sort of, it's all really pretty. Nothing that John Williams does is ever bad. It's just, unfortunately, the bar has been set so high by himself, by his own previous work, and it still couldn't rise up to that level. Is it still good? Yeah, sure. It's like the rest of this movie. It's a B+. The bar has been set so high where a lot of these other movies are at, A's, A+, and other elements just as good, if not better, and we still can't get to that. And I know that's a tall order, and I shouldn't be, I should be able to judge it on its own merit. And even when I do, and that's why I go back and I listen to the soundtrack on its own, I can still say, without a doubt, it's very pretty music. It's very gorgeous. It's very gorgeous. But at the end of the day, there wasn't any singular, epic, iconic musical moment the way that we expect a Star Wars movie to have. And it makes me really sad because I love music and I love Star Wars music, and it's some of the most emotional, music, especially just in general, in the history of music in general that we've ever gotten. And the fact that we can't get that here in the biggest movie of all time, it's a letdown. I don't know who I'm going to go for in that Oscar category, but because, see, that's really, I don't want to just bag on this movie. I don't want to bag on John Williams. I don't want to bag on anybody in particular, even the stuff that is lacking, because, this movie isn't 100% original. It really does feel like Ken Knapsack of Screen Junkies and Schmoes Know. He got it best where he says that this movie really does feel like a cover song at times, and it does. The fact that we have a Death Star 3.0, it does. They just straight up lift a lot of stuff from those previous movies, and it's not fantastic, but at the same time, it's not horrible and terrible. We've gotten horrible, terrible Star Wars movies before, and it's definitely not that. But so I guess at the end of the day, it's just, if I could go pretty much either way. If I start thinking about all the stuff that just I don't like about that movie, I can just really get bogged down into the minutia. And it's really nitpicky, I'll admit, but at the end of the day, I'm still excited by it. I'll still buy it so that way I can enjoy it and just enjoy BB-8, who is like the most perfect thing about that movie. I'll probably say next to Rey and Kylo Ren. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this movie. I really, really did like it. Unfortunately, there are going to be stuff, especially if you're someone who is familiar with the Star Wars universe, there's going to be stuff you don't really dig. But that's okay, because we still get the others, and we're still getting new ones, and we're still getting Rogue One, and these spin-offs, and I'm sure they're working on an extended universe. I'm sure there's video games and cartoons and all kinds of other good shit coming out. So at the end of the day, a world with new Star Wars stuff is always going to be a better one. So, well, I guess that's it. I better go find my dog. Maybe I'll put on Star Trek so that way we can fall asleep tonight without him trying to judo chop me in the throat. So yeah, let me know what you think. Subscribe, like, comment, whatever it is that you want to do. And I'll talk to you guys later. Okay, love you, bye.